Hi and welcome to Facebook Live. My name's Nick and we're here in Townsville again, and we're here with 9 Health Battalion, and we're here talking in a health resuscitation tent. This is a lot like an emergency room you'll see at a normal hospital, except it's got a canvas roof and dirt on the floor, and it can be set up in a very short space of time. So today we're going to be talking to all these guys in their different roles in that health resuscitation tent, and a bit more about what it takes to get there and what they do. So Michael, this is your tent, you're the doctor?
This is my tent. I'm Captain Michael Hayes. I'm in medical command of this tent. So we've got this beautiful resuscitation facility, most importantly staffed by a very competent team. So, I'm a GP in real life. This is a lovely spot for me to be, upskilling here.
Yeah. And so we're all Army reservists here as well. That's probably something that I should have mentioned. So all of these guys are part-time, and all the people that you'll see there are part-time. So these are health roles that people are doing, and they're pulling on a uniform and using their health skills to serve the Australian Army. So if you'd like to introduce your team here.
Absolutely. So obviously I'm the medical officer. Next is Steve. Steve's the nursing officer. Tell us about yourself, Steve.
So hello, my name is Lieutenant Stephen Davey. I'm a nursing officer. In Civvy Street I work at Mater Hospital in Mackay, where I work in perioperative nursing, so theatre nurse. I've been in the Defence Force for over 25 years.
Okay, so plenty of experience there. And has that all been part-time?
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic. So plenty to draw on. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm Private Peace. Currently I am a combat medical attendant, been in the Defence Force for 3.5 years, and on Civvy Street I'm a registered nurse.
So what we'd sort of like to do is sort of start to show you a bit of a journey, a bit of a scenario about what and how this facility works. So here you've probably noticed this is Phil. Now Phil's done himself a mischief, and he's wound up in here. He's obviously not super seriously injured, but we'll show you a bit of footage, and we'll go to a bit of footage that we shot earlier of Phil getting picked up from the field in the combat ambulance. So we'll go to that now and we'll come back to you soon, but by all means this is live, so if you've got some questions, type them in and we'll get to them over the course of the next sort of 45 minutes or so. Over to that footage. Welcome to the G-Wagon 6-wheel drive Army ambulance. We're here with Amy, our combat paramedic, and Phil, who's our patient who's done himself a mischief, and we're going to treat him here. So it's green on the outside, but it's obviously an ambulance on the inside. Mm-hmm. Is it much different to the civilian ambulance that you drive around in normally, Amy?
Pretty different, yeah. It's got to be a lot more capable off-road, so we can get out bush where most of the people are injured. It's also, as you can see, got a bit more tactical seat belts and things like that for rough roads and bumps and bombs and that kind of thing.
So what's Phil done to himself?
Just stick your arm out. So Phil was walking along and he's tripped and fallen onto his hand, outstretched, and he's just got pain in his wrist now, so we're suspecting he might have fractured his wrist. We've already given him some painkillers, so he's pretty good on that level, and we're just going to splint his hand so it's not moving around too much while we drive along.
Okay.
So nice and easy, just kind of lift your hand up there. That's it.
So we're just trying to give you a bit of an idea about what some of the health roles are, and we're going to follow Phil's journey through some of the health capability of the Army. So what are you doing there? You're just making a splint for his hand?
Yeah, so we carry these lightweight splints that are kind of just designed to use on any part of the body. You can move them and flex them like I am, so you can fit it to different parts. They can be a bit hard to get in the right spot, but once you've got it right, it sits quite well.
And generally speaking, as a combat paramedic, your role is to stabilise the patient?
Yeah, so go out to point of injury, because often in the military world you can't move, or you can't get to the patient that easily, so we'll go out in an ambulance like a G-Wagon and go and pick them up so that we can take them there. Because if you try and make them, most of the time they've walked in, and they're not going to be very happy, thank you very much Phil, walking back with their injury. Phil's quite good because he can walk, but say if they'd fallen or been bitten by a snake or something like that, they wouldn't be able to walk too easily.
So which part of the medicine or the health service that you deliver do you enjoy the most? Do you just like the variety, or?
It's the variety, and it's more I'd say more personal when you're with the army, because often you know the people you're treating. Just pop your hand out for me there, Phil. You know the people you're treating, and you're usually working with your own unit, so you know them all. You've worked with them before, and they're a bit. I don't know. It's just easier to work with. You've got a bit of a closer connection because you know what they've been doing. How's that there? Perfect. You know what they've been doing, and you want to get them back to being able to do it, I guess.
Yep. And so, what are the other things that you're trained in? So, do you get to use all the skills that you've got as a civilian paramedic in here? So,
as it stands at the moment with paramedic registration, for us to be in the army, you've got to work as a state-based paramedic, and you work under your state protocols. So I can do whatever I can do in Civvy Street in army, with certain limits. Obviously, you're not going to have some of the drugs in Civvy Street aren't compliant or not suitable for the army environment.
Okay, so it is very similar in terms of responsibility.
In terms of responsibility, yeah.
But you get extra things, I suppose, as part of your role with the army. You also get a weapon. Yeah,
we've got to carry around the rifle. The addition of having to protect your patient and yourself is a bit of something you've got to learn. We're always taught that we're soldiers first and your medic second. We all get trained as a basic soldier first up, because when things go to ground, you're no use just helping one person. You've got to defend them as well, if that makes sense.
And what sort of made you join in the first place? What were you really looking to get out of it?
Originally, when I joined, I was back at uni and just wanted a bit of exposure, I guess, and maybe learn some different skills and see if I could advance what I was learning at uni, and it did that. It was a lot more trauma-based. I was originally doing nursing at uni, so it was good to get and then see the pre-hospital environment, the field environment, and that kind of thing, and learn different skills, meet different people who are all like-minded. We've got a good health company here, and you've got medics, doctors, people who are police in Civvy Street and medics in the army, good backgrounds, and yeah.
And it all sort of comes together, and do you learn stuff from everyone?
Oh yeah, for sure. And especially because you're not all working at the same place. We've got people up here from WA, from Townsville, from Brisbane. They all bring different skill sets, different opinions. And
so Amy, tell me a bit about the training that you had to do to become a combat paramedic, as different to the paramedic that you do as a civilian.
So the combat paramedic training, it's already assumed that you've got the clinical experience. So we do two-week blocks of military training where you go over your clinical again, but you put it in the military environment. So you learn about the military paperwork, the military evacuation and equipment, because equipment and things like that are always the same, always different. There's always, even in Civvy Street, you move hospitals, you move services, there's different equipment. It's the same in defence. You've got to learn their equipment, their way of doing things, their communication systems. Obviously we can't just call up on a mobile phone when you're outfield. You've got to learn how to call a CASEVAC and use the radios and that kind of thing.
So CASEVAC, is that casualty evacuation?
Yes, casualty evacuation. Yep.
Well, Phil, thanks for being our patient. We're going to take you to the treatment team tent now, which is the next part of his journey from injured on the battlefield to getting some proper health care. And welcome back, Phil. You've now seen the story of Phil and how Phil came to get here. Now, thankfully, Phil only has a fracture, and obviously this is a very good facility to deal with that, but it's set up and its capability is so much more, Michael.
Absolutely. So it's primarily a resuscitation bay, so the same as you'd find in any hospital. Obviously, like you said, a little bit different. So obviously we've all got our own roles here, but most importantly we're a team, we work together. I act as a team leader, I stand away from the patient, I make those clinical decisions about what to do, what the problem is, what we should be doing treatment wise. But it's very important to have a team. Everyone's got a say in the team, we work very well together. So second in command to me effectively is going to be Steve, the nursing officer. Steve works with the airway. Tell us about that, Steve.
So essentially my role in the resus team is to look after the patient's airway. So if the patient's been involved in trauma from a motor vehicle accident and they haven't secured the patient's spine with a collar, then with the team we will assist in putting a collar on. But then my role is to secure his airway. And whether that means I need to use adjunct airways that we have behind here, then I can use those in accordance with the doctor's orders. And we, with the team, will assess his breathing and his airway.
So it really is like you're set up for something very serious. Like Phil could come in and not be breathing, and you would be ready to go and save his life.
Absolutely, that's our main goal here. Obviously, we deal with a lot of musculoskeletal complaints, sprained ankles, fractures, various minor ailments. We can do all that very well, but this bay here primarily is to save people from those severe injuries, and that's what we do well, I think.
Okay, so we talked a bit about in the footage you saw before, the field ambulance picking them up from the front line, bringing them to this facility. How far would this facility be based from the front line?
Look, it varies, it depends. So this facility is placed with a whole lot of other support elements, command, people to fix things. So we generally stay reasonably close, but it will vary. How close do you think, Steve, we generally be?
Well, it could be serious, so anything from, say, a couple of kilometres up to maybe 10 or 15 kilometres, depending on what's happening in the battle space.
Okay.
And what the threat is to elements like us.
But it's interesting, as part of that, we've got to be very flexible because obviously this, it's all in a state of change, and so we've got to be able to pack all of this up very rapidly, put it in the truck, set it up again so we can move and stay close.
And so when you move, you're always pretty much ready to go. Can you tell me a bit about what happens when you pull the truck up and you stop?
Absolutely. So there's nothing here. We're in a basic area. We've got a truck out the back. So immediately what we do is set up something called a tailgate service. So the medical officer, the nursing officer will hop straight out, back of the truck down. All the critical equipment is right at the back, and so we can pull that out. That's the stretcher that Phil's sitting on, our basic monitoring equipment, oxygen, everything we'll need to deal with someone in extremis on the side of the road effectively. We can get that set up really within 60 to 90 seconds, very rapidly to deal with people immediately. While we're doing that, the rest of the team will begin to set up the tent, everything else here we need. Once that's done, looking at a full setup from scratch, probably 25 to 30 minutes, then we move them in here where there's obviously more equipment, more space, better shelter, and deal with them in a better way. So it's really quite a short period of time we can be effective.
And the focus is really on the function, which is saving lives, and that capacity to save lives close enough to where there's potential, I suppose where there's lots of soldiers with a potential different threat level.
Absolutely, and to do that very rapidly and in very close proximity.
So talking a bit about some more differences between this and your standard emergency.
Tent to the floor.
Tent on the floor, I guess. The other stuff that you're leaning your thumbs on, you don't see those?
No, no, it's not. It's a little bit awkward at times. So this is, everyone now gets issued with all this equipment and the body armour, and it creates different challenges which you don't have to meet in Civvy Street, really. But we get used to that very rapidly.
And there's this notion of that you are a soldier first and then a health professional?
Obviously it can be a little bit difficult, but primarily, everyone in the Australian Army is a rifleman first. So we've got weapons here we have to have close by, we've got out there, you've got to have the armour and the helmet. And that can be a little bit, so as health professionals, our motto in the outside world is first of all, do no harm. And it's hard to do no harm if you're going to shoot someone. But that's, very much we are limited to defensive capabilities. None of us will extend out or doing any attack, so very much we stay right in the middle of the big base. If we're getting attacked, then we can shoot back, but really it's not our primary function.
Because I guess we're operating as part of a team. You're in a support area, so there's transports and other logistic elements surrounding us. Okay.
And so within a base, the medical facility would generally be right in the middle of the facility, so we're not really close to any source of attack, but we're in the army, it could happen, we need to be prepared, and so we need to be able to be riflemen if need be.
Okay. So everything you see here, is it really quite similar to what you would find in a standard emergency room that both of you guys would work at in Civilian Street.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
The equipment is very similar. It is what they will see in Civilian Street. Some of it may just be a different colour, or maybe just made to different specific requirements for the military. So to be waterproof, dustproof, you can drop it, it won't break.
Yep.
However, it is still very similar to what you would use.
And everything's got to be very portable. So we've got all this modular stuff, colour-coded stuff you can see behind you. There's 4 more boxes full of other things. And obviously quantities are different. We haven't got an endless quantity of the equipment. But in general, it's all top quality equipment. You know, there's top quality monitoring there. Things you would find in all the best facilities in the world, really. So we've really got the ability to do whatever anyone else can do. But it is a relatively austere environment, so we can't look after people indefinitely. And so, you know, we look after people acutely unwell, but we need to be moving them on somewhere in the fullness of time for their definitive treatment.
Okay, so that's probably an interesting point about what this has. So we've got our frontline medics, and they can get transported here, where they can get stabilised. Where to next? What happens on Phil's journey from here?
So Phil's probably okay. Phil looks pretty good to me now, really.
Yeah.
So
He's always looking good.
there's a lot of other options, really. So where we're going on exercise Talib and Sabre, near Rockhampton in the Shoalwater Bay training area, there's a really large hospital facility, you know, Australian regular army facility. It's got surgeons and intensivists and emergency doctors. You know, it's got radiographers, it's got X-ray, it's got everything. So most of our cases will go to there, really, by road. That will be a distance where we can transport people by road in the ambulance. If someone's really critically unwell, then there's always the next facility from there. So in our case, down in Shoalwater Bay, that'd be Rockhampton Hospital. And there's obviously Army air assets that do that. We've got civilian contractors that do that. So there's a really fantastic service to get people help very rapidly once we've stabilised them in that initial phase, I would say.
Yeah, okay. We've got like that health facility that Michael referenced down in Shoalwater Bay. There's some footage on the on some other Facebook pages, and we'll link you to some videos. It's a really, really impressive video. This is obviously a tent that can be thrown up in a very short space of time. That is a proper medical facility. That is a tent that I think you can do surgery in.
Absolutely, they can and do. It's got floors even, that's how good it is.
Floors, air conditioning.
Air conditioning, yeah.
So it takes a bit longer to set up, but that it really gives that capability for a surgical theatre to be set up largely anywhere.
Absolutely, and so there'll be multiple tents like this supporting the Army close, and they will feed back into those larger facilities, which is staffed with really top-level people. You know, a mix of those medical professionals and nursing officers, regular Army people and Australian Army Reserve officers.
Okay. We'll take a few questions from the people out there. If you've got any questions, please put them in, and we'll start to get through them as best we can. So looking at a few here. Does the Defence Force sponsor students doing a double degree in nursing, midwifery, or only nursing? I think I can answer that one. They only sponsor the first degree in terms of nursing rather than the double degree. So yes, they do sponsor them. It is the Defence University sponsorship. So that is an opportunity for you. John Vallis has got a question, and probably best at you, Michael. As a current medical student, I'm worried about the potential doors I'll close if I join the armed forces as a medical officer. Are my prospects of becoming a specialist in civilian life tarnished by time spent in the Defence Force?
No, look, I wouldn't think so at all. So part of my civilian role is supervising junior Army doctors on the Army base. Obviously, it depends how long a uni degree is. Generally, medical officers come out with a 5-year return of service obligation. And that's not wasted time by any means. You are generally, those people will come out with a fellowship of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners or similar, which is a qualification that I've got, which will really do you for life. There is scope for people to, once they've done that 5 years, they can specialise within the Army. There are positions now to encourage people to do that, to work in Civilian Street, to train in Civilian Street, but be employed by the Army. But look, even if you want to do your 5 years and get back out, you've got a lot of experience, you've got a lot of medical experience, you've got a lot of qualifications, and you can proceed down the same roads as your friends would, you know, once they've finished their medical degree, with the bonus of really being paid for your medical degree.
Yep. Okay, thanks for that question. Hope that helps, John. Serena Jenkins asks, can qualified enrolled nurses join or only registered nurses?
Well, the registered nurses is what they were looking for nursing officers. The medics that were doing the training previously all came out with an endorsed enrolled nurse qualification. So I know I can speak for myself. They're mainly looking for registered nurses. So yeah.
Okay.
Endorsed nurses would come out and be medics, couldn't they?
Exactly right.
Similar to you, Dean.
Yeah, so they could come in and join as a combat medical attendant, and they can complete other mod training courses down at Albury Wodonga.
And utilise all their skills too.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Dominic's asking if there's any roles for a naturopath. I don't think there is.
No, that's an easy one. So there's not. I suspect.
And I guess the focus of healthcare in the ADF is really about that primary and emergency care. Is that a reasonable summary?
Absolutely. So a lot of the training that we get is based for this scenario, for this critical care that we need to do in a big hurry. So most of us have got experience with the more day-to-day aspects of healthcare from our civilian life, but our training and what the Army wants is more critical care, I would say, really. And that applies for nurses as well, wouldn't you say, Steve? That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And just a bit about, I suppose, what got you into the role. So you were a GP, you were, obviously fairly comfortable, and then you decided to... Why did you decide to join?
So I've only really been in the last couple of years. I've very experienced GP, stable practice, and I very much enjoy general practice, but after a while you want to seek out a challenge. I was toying with joining Medicine Sans Frontières, doing some work like that, but the Army sort of came up, and it seemed like a really good sort of alternative to that. There's the possibility of deploying overseas and doing humanitarian work. The Army sends a lot of people overseas to Fiji and similar, after tsunamis and cyclones. They do a lot of good work there. But it also presents a challenge, so I'm challenged both physically, obviously, by working in this sort of environment, and you really can upskill quite well. The Army provides excellent training, I think, for all of us. There's lots of courses, a lot of opportunity to upskill, and that seems like at a certain stage in life you want to do a little bit more and be challenged a little bit. The Army provides that. Plus they pay you too, so that's not bad. Getting a hobby that challenges you, that you get paid for, is quite good.
And this is probably one for a lot of people may or may not know. It's tax-free pay, right?
Tax-free money, so it doesn't affect if anyone's got any entitlements of any description, it won't affect that at all. Okay. So look, really, people, the money's nice, but nobody joins for the money. I couldn't speak for any of us, really.
That's true.
But the money's nice to have it, but really we join because we want to be part of the Army.
And I guess, we've got dirt on the ground, we're in the dust, it's 27, 28 degrees, it's pretty warm in this tent, if you can see some beading sweat. It is more difficult than working in an air-conditioned hospital.
It gets you right out of your comfort zone, which is a nice thing. Look, it's not an insurmountable obstacle, it's not terrible. Anyone with a basic level of fitness can enlist in the Army and do very well. So I don't want to give the impression that it's not a nightmare, but there are compromises to be made.
And new skills, like what other sort of new skills, like you're obviously medical professionals and keen to learn about medical professionals, but what skills has the Army given you that haven't been in that medical space?
Yeah, so the skills that I've learned is the marksmanships for weaponry.
Not really great in civilian world, though.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not good in civilian world, but it's another skill. That's the reason why I also joined defence, is that you learn new skills, you learn different skills. You're always outfield. You're working in a hospital that's, like they're saying, in the dirt. It's a tent. It's not in an aircon room or polished floors. And also the mateship is great. You get to meet people that you wouldn't meet anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that the mateship absolutely is true, but that sort of flows back into the primary, the clinical sense, because you're with these people 24 hours a day. And so you really pick up a lot of. There's a big flow of information back and forth between professionals, which isn't as great as I've found in the civilian world. We learn off a variety of people doing different things, I think, so
Yeah, 100%.
Dean can tell me stuff, I can tell Dean stuff. Got a lot of experience in a very compressed period of time. I think that's clinically excellent, really.
That probably flows into a question here from Louise Smith. How is being a nursing officer in comparison to being a civilian registered nurse? Is it as rewarding and as challenging?
For sure. And you've got to remember, you're not just a nursing officer as well. So you will be put through RMC, where you'll be taught everything to be a soldier, and leadership. So you're going to be a leader as well. So you're expected to step up and not just be a nurse. Also, as we've highlighted, there are a multitude of roles that you can do in the military as a nurse. So here I am standing in a resus tent. Salesmen say, well, ex-Hemel in 2010, I was working in the field hospital. I was in the surgical team. In that hospital, you've got ICU, you have pathology, you have every other role that you can do in a civilian sector, but it's in a hospital in the middle of the field. So there are lots of different things you can do as a nurse in the military.
Okay. And that probably flows in as well. Bianca asked, what are some of your best experiences as Army medical employees? What are some of your career highlights, I guess?
Really, look, I think for me so far it's been going on courses, meeting a lot of my peers, spending a lot of time with them, and learning new skills. You develop in this sort of environment very close ties very quickly. And look, there is a lot of education and upskilling, but it's that close ties with other people within that medical professional field that I find the most rewarding and certainly the best experience so far.
So just looking at a few more questions here. Hang on, sorry, we'll just get a few more. So how much time does a medical officer spend in each of the close health and general health battalions? Is it around 50-50?
Look, it varies a lot by medical officer, I think, but I think they try to get a lot of time in both of those scopes. Some of those, it varies from state to state and city to city, so it depends what each of those units is doing. But look, 50-50, I suppose.
Yep.
I have to look. I couldn't know off the top of my head, really.
Yep. Okay. Alicia asks, she's a paramedic. She wants to join full-time in the ADF. What options are there for me? So the combat paramedic that we met before in Amy, she was part-time, so that's a definitive role. But what are the full-time roles if you're a paramedic?
Full-time role as paramedic, you would have to join as a medic in the Defence Force. So you would still have to go down to Albury Wodonga, complete your 18 months, and you'll get a diploma of nursing and also a diploma of paramedical science.
Christian's asked, why so many angry faces? I don't think we're that angry, mate. I reckon we're pretty friendly.
We're a little hot, but
yeah,
that's
we're a little warm. They're wearing armour.
Yeah.
It's a pretty dusty environment. Is it possible to apply as a nursing officer as a new graduate? That one's from Rachel Kim.
Steve,
So, new graduate.
Yeah.
So essentially, I looked at the undergraduate program when I was coming in as a nursing officer. I was a reservist at the time in an infantry unit. Once you have graduated as a nurse, you need to complete 2 years of postgrad experience before your 2-year period you could apply and go that way.
Okay. A few more questions here. This one's from Kristen. I have a critical care background as a registered nurse. Can you join Army, Navy, Air Force as a specialist officer, or is it just for one service, e.g. RAF?
It's one service, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't be in multiple.
Yeah, you'd have to join one service. Yeah, you'd be yeah.
But I suppose that rolls into the roles of you in the Australian Defence Force. You're not just going to work purely on Army personnel.
No, so we will. I mean, Steve, you're looking at deploying next year on the US Navy ship, and so there'll be multiple people there from different nations, let alone different services. So you're not really locked in, even though generally you'd be employed by that one service, I would have thought.
Correct. And even the field hospital that's deployed, there may be other services in the field hospital helping out. If there's a critical shortage in one area, however, if they can pull it from another service like Navy, they'll do so.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, when if you've got this facility set up and there's troops, I think we're working with the American Army and the New Zealand Armies out there, if someone does require some care, you guys are there.
Straight away, they'll come straight into us. So.
Yeah, because you happen to be the closest or whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there is certainly variety, and there's certainly no rules about green uniform.
But also no ability to be above all of that. There's still those divisions in between the services, I would say.
Gabrielle's got a question here. We'll keep these going. Will nursing officers be assigned in other areas, like theatre, emergency or whatever, or will they be assigned only in one area?
With nursing officers, essentially it'll come back to your core trade and what specific trade you do, or what area you work in civilian sector. To cross over to other areas, I would imagine that you would have to have the appropriate experience or qualifications to do so. But however, a registered nurse can work in a treatment team or a holding bay. We all have the same basic skills. However, when you're looking at things like in theatre, I'm a theatre nurse, so I can work in theatre. Okay. If you didn't have that appropriate skill set, it would be hard for you to come and work in theatre.
And that sounds a bit similar to what we were talking with Amy before. That was on the video. She's authorised as a paramedic in her state, and she's authorised to do pretty much the same things outfield. So it's things that align with their licence or qualifications.
Correct. In your scope of practice.
Yep. Okay. So hopefully that sort of makes sense. They're really worried about you. There's lots of questions worried about you, and can worried about what sort of chit that you're going to get and how long it's going to take you to get back.
No shame.
So thanks to everyone who's really concerned about Phil. He hasn't got a microphone, so he can't really talk, but he is going to be okay. And he doesn't even have a speech impediment either. Just looking for some more questions here. Keep them coming through, and we're happy here to answer them. So a quick question about, I suppose, a bit more about what you're doing next. So we're up here on exercise Talisman Sabre.
Yeah.
It's a large exercise. We're talking more than 10,000 troops from different nations. Where do you go from here?
So obviously this is in Townsville, this is where our unit is based. We're doing all this prep work, getting to know each other, setting all the equipment out. Over the next couple of days, some of us will go down in a convoy, drive down to the Shoalwater Bay training area with all our equipment. And I think some of us are even flying down in Hercules. Dean is embedded with an infantry unit, so you'll be travelling with them.
Yeah, correct. So I'm embedded with a combat team. So my role in this exercise is an integral medic. So I'll be out there with them, providing healthcare so they can push forward to complete their mission. And then I filter the patient back to a tent like this.
So when you're talking about that role, that's how many infantry soldiers would you be? Is it with a platoon? Or?
Yeah, so I'm with a company. So
a company.
Yeah, so you can have up to 100 or more.
So company is up to 100, and you're there as their, co-located health person.
Yep. So they can continue to complete the mission.
And does that mean that you're out of the tent, out of the car, you're...
At times, yeah, correct, yeah. So I can be sent on patrol, I can go out and do the pack march with them. I'm also in the headquarters providing that support and advising how they can retrieve that patient.
So a whole bunch of different varieties of different tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dean, it's worth mentioning that. So the soldiers are carrying all their equipment, everything they've got to eat and sleep. Dean's doing that, and he's carrying another 10, 20 kilos of medical equipment as well.
Yeah.
So, it's quite an important role that you need to be good at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I suppose you're looking forward to that challenge.
Definitely. Can't wait.
That particular role takes a lot of training. So Dean's been spending a lot of time walking around with a backpack on his back.
3 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pack marching, 30 kilos plus.
Oh, wow.
So he's fit. It's good. There's a benefit there. That's why we talk about those challenges. It's really quite a challenging role.
Yeah, it's better to be prepared than not prepared.
Yeah, and look, and that's something that obviously you're interested in, that is vastly different from your normal day-to-day role.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
And it's not something you have to do, but it's something that you can do.
Which enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting also that it gives Dean a lot more independence than you would have in your day-to-day job too, clinically. So there's a lot more satisfying clinically. You see people, you make the decision.
Correct. Yeah.
Of course, he's got support. He can contact me at any point if he wants any information, but it's on Dean.
Okay. So, exercise Talisman Sabre, we've got people out in the field embedded with infantry troops. We've got people flying in on Hercules into into the area. We've got people driving in. It's a big exercise. There's lots of different things going on. Back to the questions here. Johan Lauser asks, what does a medical officer's day look like when he's not on deployment or doing an exercise?
So most of the medical officers will have their time divided between civilian practice. They'll be getting their fellowship with the College of General Practitioners. They'll have a couple of days there, a couple of days doing medical things within the Army, and a day of purely Army things, administrative stuff. So look, it's a bit of variety there. That's quite an interesting role that they've got. They all seem pretty happy with their role. It's not often that someone pays you to gain a qualification and sort of helps you out with that sort of stuff. Being a medical officer in the Army, be it in the Army Reserve or the regular Army, you do have to go away on courses, so there will be weeks away at a time doing training, but again, that's upskilling, and they're generally very enjoyable and informative courses in my experience.
Yep. Okay, a few more questions. So Louise is asking, she's currently completing a Bachelor of Nursing with the intention to apply for the undergrad scheme. If she's successful, what's the process once she's graduated? She's got to do her 2 years. So she's got to do her 2 years in the civilian hospital. Does the ADF choose the hospital, and will it be an ED or ED, the emergency department,
yep.
Or will she have a say?
From what I understand, after they've completed the first year of university, they can apply for the undergraduate program. Then the military will support them during the university time in for tuitions and HECS and all that sort of stuff. At the end, when they've graduated and they've completed their university, they then do 2 years a postgrad in a civilian hospital, which between obviously the member and the military, they would come up with the appropriate place that you would go to,
yep.
And it's not just in one area. So there's they would place the placement, or the postgrad placement would be in a number of areas, so they get a broad, I suppose, broad experience that is useful to the military.
Yeah. What are the primary areas they're looking for though for nurses? Like we talked about, it couldn't be a midwife, but what else can you do?
Obviously, emergency department would be one. Medical, surgical, and I'd imagine they might even get some theatre as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But things like midwifery would be something that they would most likely do at a later date as a specialty. Okay. Yes.
So hopefully that helps. This is probably a good question. I like this one. Marianne Angela Hawkins says, what's the equipment on their body? So we'll probably talk about what you've got on you, and including potentially whether there's any...
kind of set this one out because I'm integral. So in this pouch here, I'll have all the just basic trauma first aid stuff. So I have like a tourniquet, some combines. Crack it. Pretty messy.
Right on the ground.
So we have these Israel bandages that we use to stop hemorrhage. If you need some more hemorrhaging, I then put in a combine with another one. And then I've just got gloves in there as well, and my medications that I require, so pain relief and that. The next one are my magazines. In this one, the front one, I'll have a tourniquet and glow stick as well, so that's important. This one, I have a device to alert the choppers or my location if we need any AME assistance, if we need calling. Obviously, trauma, shears, a little torch, a pen, and then drop bag. Once you finish with your mags, you drop them in there.
Sound equipment, very important.
Sound equipment, very important.
There's no secrets here around magic.
Yeah. There's a cleaning kit.
For your rifle.
Very important. Also have my spoon for food. Also important.
Yeah.
Also have my little face mask as well because it's going to get cold apparently at shore water. Don't want to get cold. And then at the back I have extra supplies. So Pentrain whistle, some camo paint. Should get that out actually. Some paint. My headlamp and a multi-tool as well.
And on the back.
On the back,
we've all got camera
hydration.
bags.
Yeah. So
As well.
a couple of litres of water. And so wonderful can paint. So When you're embedded with your infantry unit, you're obviously going to have to be using campaign every day when you're out in the field.
Yeah, and you still have to do the morning routine, so you still have to shave, you still have to apply it.
Yep.
Those rules still apply.
And for you guys, when in the tent, are you going to be cammed up or?
If we're transporting around, then we're cammed up, I think, Steve, aren't we? But in the clinical environment, not so much.
Clean. So it would be dictated by, the commander of the element that we are embedded with. They would give us direction on what they would expect. However, most of the time we would clean skin.
Yeah. Hopefully, most of the time we're clean skinned.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're obviously carrying lots of gear, and it's all very much meant to be nice and handy, nice and close,
Yep.
ready to go. So,
and then I would also have a med kit on back as well.
Mike was asked, what about toilet paper? Probably got some of that there somewhere.
In your ration pack.
Yep. It is.
It's in your ration pack.
Yep.
It's in your ration pack.
So thanks for that, Michael. It is a fact.
Um,
So Xander asked an interesting questions, probably for you guys. What is the officer's course like when you become an officer for your profession? So you were obviously a qualified doctor and a qualified nurse,
Yeah.
and then you're coming into the army. What was that course like?
Well, so it's quite an interesting course. So you go down to Royal Military College Duntroon, an area of great history. You do what's called a specialist service officer course for 6 weeks. So it's 6 solid weeks where they jam you a lot of information, leadership, army structures. You do field time, spend time out field. You do fitness. What else, Steve?
Yeah, so you start going into things like military appreciation processes. How to be a leader, how to command others, how to understand the broader picture. So I'm a nurse here in a tent, but I need to understand what other elements out there are doing and how I fit in with those other elements. So everything from rifle drills, eating ration packs, infantry minor tactics, all the way up to leadership, as you just said.
As well as the shooting, like Dean said. That's one of the things. I had no contact with any sort of weapons prior to this, so it's an interesting experience to learn to shoot, I think, really.
And it's not only learning; you have to do that every year. You have to re-qualify.
Absolutely. You've got to reach a certain standard,
Yep.
which I can barely tick, so that's fine.
But the fact is that you get that tick.
Yeah, absolutely.
You tick in the box, and you're good to go.
The other unique role with Captain Hayes and Sir is that if our other forces out there die,
Yeah.
these guys may still have to command. So their skills in giving orders, they still have to apply that knowledge as well.
Yeah, it goes back to that leadership, doesn't it? Which is, again, is a skill that you can learn, which is interesting coming from our medical backgrounds.
Yep.
Particularly as a GP, most of it's working one-on-one with patients, and so it's good to develop some skills, dealing with multiple groups of people.
Yep. Okay. Everyone's still worried about you.
Phil,
They're still wondering whether
Phil's
about your
okay.
papillary. We're not checking your obsts.
No.
But
You're stable.
you're stable.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
He's smiling. He's got good colour.
He's had a stack of ketamine. He's
Yeah,
okay.
he's,
All right.
he's okay. You're also worried about you having to repack all your stuff.
That's fine.
So it's
That's
all
a
right.
standard thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every zip may not be up perfectly, but it will be shortly.
Will be close.
Your section is all okay. So there's John's said it was the best job he's ever had. If only he could go back and do it all over again. So there's lots of people that have got a lot out of their medical roles. Here's a good question. So Maddie Hatfield asks, is there a good idea to join the reserves while studying paramedicine to get a better feel for the army environment, or just apply after you've got a degree and experience?
I think probably Phil's best suited to answer that, because Phil's final year in studying dual degree of paramedic and nursing. But interestingly, certainly in our unit, there's a lot of paramedical students, people who are, people are paramedics. So I would encourage him to join now. What would you say, Phil? Nod, shake?
I'm going to do this. So there you go. Phil has a voice. He's real.
I'm allowed to talk. I'm okay, everyone. So what was the question again? Sorry.
So would you join after you've qualified and go straight in as a paramedic, or would you join whilst you're still studying?
Yep. So I've joined while I'm studying, and it gives you a good experience of the clinical exposure and good experience of if later on down the track you apply for a paramedic position. It gives you and your employer as well an idea that you've got good clinical knowledge, you've worked in a resus environment, and you can work with a team.
So hopefully I thought that was a great question, and you know, there are a few options as whether you come in as you're qualified or not, but I guess it's up to you.
I think also it's interesting. So we look at Phil. So Phil's a student, but he's got intimate daily contact with all of us, you know, so qualified people, and we discuss things, we talk about stuff. Phil's very much a member of the team, and so if you were just a student, you wouldn't necessarily have that degree of exposure clinically that you can get every Tuesday night, you know, on the weekend, on exercise. Shake, nod?
Yeah. Sorry, I've taken your voice away.
The other thing to that, what they're saying is, yes, you may not be you qualified in that role yet. However, by coming into the military, whether you come in as reservist, that gives you an opportunity to see what the military's like. So they might come in while they're still training, join the reserves, but then realise that not just the reserves is great, but then they might want to push on then to the regular army. Mm-hmm. So while they're still training, they're doing their training in the background, they're doing a reservist. Once they're qualified, they might just go, well, okay, this is good for me, I want to do this full time, and then move on. Okay. So there's opportunities for both there.
Yep. You know, if you had some advice, Dean, pitch this one at yourself, if you had some advice for someone who was considering it, who's got a nursing degree, who's a registered nurse or a paramedic, what would you suggest in terms of joining? Do it?
Just do it.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. You'll enjoy it. It's a good achievement. It's a great adventure. Just do it.
Okay. And so you've been doing this for how long?
3.5 years.
Yeah. And you've been in the reserves yourself, Steve, for how long?
For over 25 years. So almost 26 years. So not all of that was nursing, obviously. I did 17 years infantry first. And then, like many of you people that are asking, I was studying to become a nurse. Once I graduated, I still had to do the 2 years. I was already in the reserve system. I still then had to apply to become a nursing officer. So I still had to go through those hurdles. However, I was already in the reserves. And then I crossed over in 2008 to a nursing officer, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah. And I think that just reminds me of one of the other things we talked about prior in terms of why you should join as a student prior. Army Reserve is tax-free, so there is no impact on Austudy or any other sort of funds. What you earn is what you take home. Yes. So this is a good part-time job for voiceless Phil, and
definitely.
And you know, so that's another pro for what you want to do. Okay. So look, that covers lots of the questions that we've gone through. I hope you've enjoyed this experience. So if you're outfield, and if you do join and you're outfield and you do happen to be injured, so this is where you're going to come in the short space before you go on to a hospital where you'll be assessed. And this is where, if things aren't going well for you, this is where your life will be saved. This is where they will make that happen and get you stabilised and off to a hospital. Put up in an hour, taken down, or put up in less than an hour, and can be taken down and shifted around very quickly, but saves lives, I suppose. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to thank you all for your help and input, and Amy earlier. That's the end of our Facebook Lives in Townsville as part of Exercise Talisman Sabre. If you've got any questions that we didn't get to answer during it, please fire them in, and we'll get them answered when we get back to the office tomorrow or this evening. And once again, thanks again. If you've got any other ideas, let us know. But otherwise, thanks for joining us, and have a good evening.